Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I know we're a few minutes behind, of course. My mouse died, but right at 8:30, so I had to go get a battery. So I appreciate your patience. Uh, to be mindful of everyone's time, I think I'm going to kick it off. Um, if I haven't met you yet, my name's Erin Kokinda. I'm the Community Economic Development Director for the town of Wakefield. I'm thrilled to have you all here today for our second session for our digital marketing and training series grant program. If you were able to join us last Wednesday night, we had a great presentation by Leah Hancock, Placid Marketing, who gave us a kind of a large overview of all the different digital marketing that's available to small businesses. Um, so just to give you some background information on this program. This is the second time that we're doing this. It was first introduced in 2021 during the pandemic. After much success and participation, the last round, I think we ended up helping around 15 businesses with the grant funds and had over 70 people attending the trainings themselves. We decided it would be a good idea for us to run it again because we understand that this is a very important aspect to your business. We also did a small business survey a couple months ago, and I think a few of you on this call took it, and we really appreciate it, and we listened to you. And one of the biggest things that was mentioned was help with marketing and social media. So I hope you find these all really helpful. So part of this is you need to attend or watch 3 of the 4 trainings to be eligible for the grant. The grant is available to Wakefield small, independently owned brick and mortar retailers, restaurants, and personal services. Like I said, you have to watch 3 out of the 4 trainings, but I think you get more out of attending. So I appreciate you all being here. And then after that, you could be eligible for up to $3,000 to implement digital marketing services of what you've learned over the last, by the end of it, 4 weeks. We have around $50,000 available, and it will run until it's depleted. And by doing, math, it could help around 16 businesses. And the applications for the actual grants are due by February 1st, 2025. So it's the holiday season, once the digital training is over, take some time, fill out the application. I'll send the link around. It will be on our website. Have any questions, reach out, but you have some time to fill that out. So last week we had Digital Marketing 101. Today we have website and search engine optimization being put on by Anthony DeMarco from the Boston Web Group. Next week, it's at nighttime again. We have Transform Your Business and Marketing Automation and AI-driven tools at night by Tomo 360. And then our last one is on November 26th, again in the morning, Public Relations for Small Businesses, put on by Kevin York Communication. So with that being said, here's a quick run through of the agenda. We're a couple minutes behind, but just wanted to make some introductions to myself and Anthony, who I'll hand it over to in a second. I'll let Anthony take the floor, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. But just some housekeeping. I please ask you to stay muted during the presentations to avoid distractions. When you're asking a question during the Q&A portion, I think it's always great to put a face to a name. So if you could turn your camera on. We don't have the chat feature here, so for you to ask a question, you'll have to use the raise hand feature, and I'll call on you, and you can ask your question live. This event will be recorded, and we will send the recording and presentations to all the attendees after the event. And I think it's really helpful for me and Anthony to know who's on this call. If you could rename yourself, there's an option to rename yourself in the Zoom. You have your name already, but with your business. And then most importantly, again, I'm just thrilled you're all here. I really appreciate you all taking the time. And with that being said, I'm going to pass it over to Anthony DeMarco from the Boston Web Group to tell us a little bit more about website and SEO, modern techniques, and best practices. So with that
Thank
being,
you.
let's
Thank you,
start.
Erin. Can everybody hear me? Sometimes it's muted and okay, cool. I want to thank everybody for making time to come to the seminar. At the end of the seminar, we'll be able to take specific questions or different questions you might have about some of the material that was covered during these topics. That said, let me get started. I'm going to share a sort of animated breakdown that covers some of the things that I'll be discussing. Um, During the part one of fundamentals of website design, we're going to talk about building a user-centric website. What does that mean? It means when you're building your website, you want to appeal to the audience that is coming to your site. And we do that in multiple different ways. So I'm going to start the animation so we can talk about what the topics are. So this is the first slide. Um, User experience often is abbreviated as UX. So what that literally means is the experience that the person is having coming to your site. Of course, that can be dictated by the types of devices that people are using. Of course, people are always using this device right here. I mean, 80% of the people coming to look at your website are going to be using their mobile device. The rest mostly are on desktop. So what we want to do is make sure that the navigation and CTAs are effective. A CTA is really just an acronym for a call to action. And the call to action could be anything like buy my thing or contact me, or whatever the case may be. Every business has a slightly different CTA or call to action, and you get to determine that, based on whatever your goals and objectives are. Um, when we look at the user experience, we're talking about these three major things. Essentially, the importance of how intuitive my navigation is. So I can essentially allow people to understand what they're there for, make sure that they know they're in the right place. The design for accessibility, this can be interpreted a few different ways. Accessibility on the whole, when we talk about that, it usually indicates the ability for people who don't necessarily have all of their faculties, like for instance, people that can't see. It's called ADA compliance. So accessibility in that regard is essentially being open and available to all different types of users. But for this purpose today, we're going to be talking about just the ability to see and get to the part of the website that they want. And then again, mobile first design approach. When you create a website for desktop, it's easy to get stuck in that view and say, this is how everybody's going to look at it, but it's not how everybody's going to look at it, right? We all have different size devices. Some people are using, these types of devices to look at your site, an iPad. So when a website is designed for this or a computer, like a desktop rather, what happens is the top half of the site is going to let me actually show you what I mean. Um, Everything that's in the top right of your site is going to start here, and the code ends at the bottom right. So you have this rectangle effect. And on a device like a mobile phone, because I have this screen monitor flipped, everything is going to stack. So the skinnier that this stuff gets, the more that it stacks. So in other words, when you design for a rectangle, you basically get an effect where it'll go across from one side of the screen to the other. And then the more you shrink it, the skinnier it makes everything go into a column. So here you can see on a phone that these boxes are in a vertical fashion, right? So the smaller that your device gets, the more your stuff gets crammed. So don't get too caught up with just designing something that's going to only work on one device size, right? because it's really easy to go down that rabbit hole, and then you realize, oh, wait, all these people are seeing this a completely different way. Now, let me move to the next slides. So now we're talking about visual design principles, and I want to just pause here for a second. This is actually like the most fun part of creating your site. So every business has a brand, and every business brand has certain brand guidelines, usually. So you get to pick your colors and your fonts, and that's kind of the fun part. After you've created your brand, you want to integrate the characteristics of your brand into your website, right? So that's when you choose your fonts and sort of color schemes, the typography, and the types of media, images, graphics, video, or otherwise animated elements that will occur on your site for the experience. I say it's the fun part because, to me, it really is. So, I think it's always fantastic to give your customers more of your brand whenever you have an opportunity to. So, you may take an element of your logo out and then use that as a design element in your content. And I'm going to push the next slide over. So brand is really, really important. At the end of the day, there's very little retention that most people have when they go to a website. So they may not actually remember that they visited your site. And in order to help sort of hammer home the concept that your business is the best business offering the service that you want to offer, you can use your brand, your colors, your logos, and the concepts behind your brand to help imbue in the customer's mind that there is that you're the right business for them to search, right? Because how often do people say, what was that site, or what was that person's email? They might not remember that, but they might remember your brand. Or hopefully they remember your brand. So that's why we want to permeate elements of your brand into your website design so that you can give the customer something to remember you by. I'm going to slide through to typography. So these are two elements that we had just talked about briefly when I had introduced this area of topic. So typography is, we're talking about fonts here. Now, if you see that this typography has these little points and little hats on it, that type of font is called a serif font. The serif font has those little characteristics, little feet, little hat, as I like to call them jokingly. And then you notice that this other font up here doesn't have that. That's a sans serif font. Sans just means it doesn't have. So it doesn't have a serif. Now, they're two very distinct kind of flavors of font. So you typically wouldn't really mix them up too much unless you were hip and when you were trying to do something specific that where it was intentional. So typically, if you've got, your brand and your brand guidelines, you'll usually pick either between a serif font or a sans serif font and keep it pretty consistent. I think this is probably the number one most missed opportunities when people design their sites on their own, is to keep the consistency on the fonts. On the other side here, we're talking about the importance of the high quality images and media that occur on the site. So a lot of times we see people that have super blurry images and things of that nature. So a way to avoid that is just by simply downloading the file that's high quality enough. So a lot of the files that you download, you can tell by how big the file is, and that can usually indicate the quality. So I know that sometimes this can be weird for people to understand, like how heavy files are. You have kilobytes, you have megabytes, you have gigabytes, and you have terabytes. Now, we all basically know what that means because of the modern use of phones and the advent of smartphones in the past 10 or 15 years. But just as like a kind of frame of reference, if your image file is like 500 kilobytes, it's probably too small. If it's 500 gigabytes, it's probably too big. So usually a nice size, high quality image is going to be, a few megabytes big, not kilobytes or gigabytes or even terabytes. Um, so I'm going to move this slide on a little bit here. Before we get into the next section, we're going to be talking about sitemaps and website architecture. However, I wanted to see, Stephanie, are you still there?
I'm here.
Hi, Stephanie from our team has some local examples of some businesses that we've worked with, and I wanted to pass the mic just for a brief second, so that we can share some of that with you, if you didn't mind. And Steph, I can also to share some examples, if you wanted to discuss it while I share. We're talking about
Anthony,
we're
you're
ta
you're
Yeah,
kind of
your
going in and out. Is
mic
that
is
just
breaking.
me? Yeah.
oh yeah, sorry about that. I haven't done anything different. But can you hear me
You're
now?
good. You're good now.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Seems more like the Wi-Fi, but yeah, you're good.
Okay. Okay, good, good.
Now he's frozen.
All right.
Yeah, you're frozen now.
To continue. Um,
Oh, Anthony, is there anything different with your Wi-Fi?
I've got a strong internet. No, no.
All right.
I can switch my if I switch my network right now, it'll drop me off the call.
It says your
But
bandwidth is
I
low
can
right
certainly
now.
try that. Let me just check. Okay. Let me switch to or now I'll switch to Comcast.
Sorry about that. Yeah, it's just saying your network bandwidth is low. Well, why would wait for him? Stephanie, I don't know if you have anything you want to talk to what he was alluding to. I know if you wanted the examples.
Yeah, is Anthony still here? We work with a
Better?
lot of local clients as well as people who are not, right in Wakefield. But we've done websites for and logo projects for lots of different types of businesses. We a couple of local electricians, some financial people, and some law firms. I'm not sure if that's what Anthony wanted me to point out or not, but I'm not
Yeah.
sure that, yeah.
You seem better now, Anthony.
Yeah.
You were freezing before.
Your
Yeah.
image looks better now too.
Okay, good. Yeah. Sorry about that. Stuff always happens it's always a video call. Um, yeah, when there's more time, we could probably share some nice examples of a bunch of local businesses that we've done some work for. But perhaps I can just continue to move through the presentation,
Yeah.
just for time's sake. So when you're building your website, you want to create the pages that will be, of course, most useful um, for your purposes, right? So what we're looking at right here is called a sitemap. So this is an example of how you might build your site. These categories, subcategories, and then subcategories essentially are pages on your website. Now, it may not seem like an important thing for you to do immediately. However, over time, you'll want to build out your website sort of as a library because of a few reasons. One, it's going to give users more information about what you're doing, selling, or what your service is. And two, arguably as important, you're going to be giving content to the search engine so that the search engine can rank you, right? So I like to think about this, and I want you to see this visual. I like to think about it as sort of like a fishing net. So the larger that net is, the more fish you can catch, right? So this is going to pertain to what I'm going to talk about in a few minutes with regard to search engine optimization. But basically, have you ever, hired an SEO person and they go, "We got to do blogs right away." Well, this is the reason why. So, if you can imagine, like some of these yellow and orange areas of this sitemap would be blog entries. And that blog entry could pertain to perhaps, let's say, for instance, if you sell donuts. Okay. So one of these post, one of these blog posts would talk about, hey, we sell great donuts, and here's colorful Jimmy's, and here's our gluten-free recipe. And that information gets spun out into Google's ecosystem. And then when Google is trying to help us, because we're the customer, right? When we're searching for something about colorful Jimmy's or gluten-free donut ingredients or whatever the case may be, there's a chance that it may serve up one of the pages on your site. Now, it might not be the homepage or even the page that you really want people to go to buy or inquire about your service. However, it's a trajectory into your site. So in other words, the user's coming in through a backdoor based on the sitemap that you've created, which allows them to then eventually get to the homepage or get to a page where they can um, eh, reach out or otherwise, activate or act upon your call to action, right? So you think about your architecture so that you've got a flow to get people to that page that you want them to eventually reach, right? So this graphic right here, I want to pause for a minute because we're showing a few boxes on a screen. And again, this is the desktop view is going to show you what things look like in a big rectangle in front of you. However, when you go to mobile, things shrink and will reorganize themselves into a vertical pattern. So it's always good before you obsess over creating a design that looks beautiful on your desktop to make sure you go over to your, one of your devices and actually make sure that you like it there too. Lots of times when people are designing websites, they'll take graphics and put words in the graphics. And what happens there is when you bake the words into your graphics, those graphics, when they shrink, the words will get smaller or bigger or fuzzier, and it looks weird. So always check your stuff if you're baking font into the graphics so that it doesn't reformat and look weird. But so for clarity purposes, make sure that your designs don't reorganize in a way that you don't like. So a lot of grids and templates that come with website builders like Wix or GoDaddy Website Builder or Weebly or Hebrew or whatever platform. I bet you there's a few people out there that are using at least one of those platforms. They come with drag and drop, very easy to use formats so that you can essentially just replace words and pictures and videos with the things that you want to say, right? Here at Boston Web Group, we primarily prefer to use WordPress. WordPress is just like those other systems, but instead of renting it from GoDaddy or from Wix or Squarespace or whatever it may be, you own the platform. WordPress is a free platform. However, it does cost money to have somebody build it and host it. And I can get into those elements. A lot of you guys already have domain names and you already have a website, whether it be something you rent from Squarespace or GoDaddy, or even some of you have WordPress. So you already have that stuff installed. So we're not going to go over that at this point, but I would urge you, if you have questions at the end, to talk about to ask those questions so that I can answer them. I'm going to go ahead to the next slide. So this slide here, we're talking about the actual content on your site. It's something to really think about, because when you're building content for your site, you kind of want to build it for two different people. One is the robot, right? Google. And the other is actually the person who's seeing it. Now, at one point, there was an argument about like which one of those is more important. I maintain that the human being is the most important audience member, and the robot is second. So that said, when you're writing your content, you should write it first for the person who's going to actually read it, and secondly, for the robot. What does that mean? Well, when Google or search engines like Google are looking at content, they're scanning it really. They don't have time to, stay for too long. So, and this pertains to the how speed affects website and search engine optimization. And I'm alluding to the next chapter. I'm using this as a segue. But when you're writing your content for a human, it's got to sound good. You pick your tone. Everyone's got a different tonality. Some people are super professional. Some people are kind of, got a little bit of humor. You pick whatever your tone is, make it consistent throughout the site, and write your content. Now, for the robot side, what we might do is go through and find and highlight the keywords. What does that mean? So let's say, for instance, in the example used earlier about donuts, there's something to do with sprinkles and something to do with gluten-free ingredients. Okay, so those are some highlighted, viable elements of the thing that that person is selling. So within the content on the page, you can make that key, that's essentially a keyword. You can make that keyword bold. You can like literally make the keyword bold. So when the search engine is scanning your content, it's looking at the words and it's going to pick up on things that are bold, underlined, or that are linked. So you can link the word gluten-free ingredient to a whole page that talks about gluten-free ingredients and cater to that audience. So what's going to happen is the person who's a human is going to say, I'm interested in this product because it's gluten-free and that's what I'm after. The robot is going to scan that page and see that you've highlighted or underlined or made a link to the word gluten-free that links to another page. It's going to jump from that page to the other page that talks about gluten-free that you link to, right? And it's going to build its own logical sitemap. So we're talking about creating engaging content that's relevant for different pages. And I'm giving you the difference between writing for the human and writing for the robot so you can find a balance, right? So you don't want to make every single word bold-faced, right? Just a few, because otherwise it doesn't work, right? And you don't want to make every single word a link or underlined. That doesn't work either. One good way to bring attention to a keyword that is the focus of your page is to use something called H1 tags. And H1 tag is basically short for header. When a robot scans the page and they go from the top down to the bottom, they're reading all the content. An H1 tag is basically just big words at the top. So it's literally stands for headers. So it might the header at the top of the page that's titled gluten-free ingredients might just be gluten-free donut ingredients, right? So now the search engine can see that and say, oh, this is a page about that. Let's remember that, and for the next time that somebody tries to search for this phrase, and we'll show them this client's website. Moving on. So this portion, we're getting into performance optimization, and people see the word optimization and they immediately think of some traumatic experience where they spent $250 on some SEO person, they didn't do anything. This is not quite that. This performance optimization, we're talking specifically about the speed. We're talking about implementing coding standards that are going to be conducive to good load times because of the necessity for your website to be fast. Let's talk about that for a minute. So like you're making a website, you want it to be beautiful, right? And then you start playing with animations like, oh, let's slide in this coffee mug and slide in this donut. And now let's have the sprinkles come down, slow motion come and hit the donut and zoom in. All these things are beautiful and those aesthetics are awesome. But what happens is you have to use a lot of what's called JavaScript in most cases to make these animations and colors and things happen. And that can cause your website to be heavier, meaning that it will download slower and that the user experience is going to take longer. Now, nobody likes that. The human beings don't like to wait because we're all, really used to just like fast stuff. But we really want it to be pretty too, so we want to balance it out, right? Now, the reason why you want to have a fast website is because search engines just literally don't have the time. They come and they will go and they will look at your page and they will go up to like 1,000 lines of code or whatever they do, and it's all proprietary. And I can't tell you exactly what they do, but I can tell you that search engines don't have the time. They come, they hit your site, they scan it, they're looking for pages, they're looking to, essentially take data back to make their own index on what you have so that when somebody in another state searches for something relevant, they can quickly say, oh, we found that on the site, here you go. Right? That's what search engines are doing. So, but if your website isn't fast or it takes like too long to load, then you're missing the ability to deliver that information, and the search engine just moves on. So, in case this doesn't make sense to some people out there, search engines use like little robots to go out and scan the website. They kind of sweep over it like a lighthouse does. And that light is only on you for that fraction of a second. So we want the site to be quick so we can quickly deliver, hey, this is the payload information we want the search engines to know. In a minute, I'll talk about techniques for doing SEO on stuff like WordPress. But the takeaway here is that you may have to balance some aesthetics with functionality so that you get the website speed that you need for search engines and for people. Moving on to the next slide. SEO essentials, here we are. All right, so now in this section, we're talking about optimizing your site for search engines. There's always lots of mystique and questions around this. I can't tell you how many customers have come to us and said, we don't think SEO works and we've had a bad experience with other people. And that actually does happen a lot. And it is super unfortunate. However, there are some basic things you can do yourself to understand about SEO for both doing it yourself and for hiring somebody. So let's talk about that a little bit. All right, so what is SEO? So essentially, SEO is the acronym for search engine optimization. Now, we use a lot of acronyms in this business. There's SEM, there's SMO, there's MPO. SEM is search engine marketing and usually pertains to paid media. So for today, we're going to talk just about SEO. What happens with SEO is you're essentially trying to wave a big flag and say, hey, Google, Bing, any other search engine out there that I might not even know about yet, we do this, please rank us for this. And if somebody searches for my product or service, please show them my site, right? Now, there's a few ways to make sure that that happens. Number one is to do all the things we just talked about. Make your website pretty, have call to actions, enhance your content with links and boldface and H1 tags so that search engines can quickly identify the key elements of your content, okay? Now, we see a couple of pages here, a couple of words here on the screen like traffic and ranking and analysis. We already talked about content and website. So when search engines are ranking your service and your website rather, they're looking at lots of elements. And one of the elements that search engines are going to look for is time on page. So we're talking right now about the analysis, right? So everyone's heard of Google Analytics too. So analytics is a way for you to do your own analysis to see how many people go to your site, where they stay, how long they stay for, and how you can improve those metrics, right? Because at the end of the day, one metric of your site that Google and other search engines are going to use to essentially figure out if your website's great or not is time on page. Now, time on page is something that you can offset by using stuff like video content. In other words, if someone comes to your site and they just spend like 5 seconds looking at it, you've only got 5 seconds time on page. But if someone comes to your site, spends 5 seconds, finds a video, and then watches that video for like 30 seconds or something, well, now they've got 35 seconds time on page. And the search engine is going to go, oh, look at that. This person went there and they spent 35 seconds on this page. Therefore, we can deduce that because they searched for gluten-free donut ingredients and then came to this website for 35 seconds, this website was relevant. So you see, this is kind of one of the ways that you can sort of convince search engines that you have great content. So I'm going to let this slide play here. This is what we're talking about. So I'm discussing at length what search engines do, why they're important, and why you should care. Let me give you another parameter that search engines are going to use to really judge whether your website is good or not. And that is called bounces. So a page bounce is when someone just comes to the site and then they leave. Now, marketing people have had this kind of argument like, well, if a person comes to the website and they bounce, it means they got what they wanted and they left. And the other side of the argument is, well, if somebody came to the website and they bounced, it wasn't what they wanted. And what we're trying to get to is like, well, what is a search engine going to think about that? Well, search engines don't really like bounce rates. So we want to keep what's called the bounce rate down. So in other words, when somebody comes to a site and they leave right away, that's a bounce, and that's going to increase something called your bounce rate. And if you have a really high bounce rate, that could be viewed as something bad, right? Okay, so we talked about something positive that search engines look for, and time on page and how that can positively impact your score in the eyes of the search engine. And we just talked about bounce rate. Bounce rate is something that can negatively impact your metrics as far as search engines go. Let's let the slide play. This slide here is about on-page SEO, and you'll notice that there's a little tiny helicopter hanging thing called title, and there's a little tiny code in the bottom there, and it says H1. That's the stuff that I talked about earlier. It's basically the way that you format content and words on your website. The title is actually a meta tag that tells the search engine this is the title of the page, and the H1 is the header tag again, which tells the search engine this is the big topic that we're talking about on this page. Now, when you do SEO on your website, that's called on-page SEO. And in a minute, we'll talk about off-page SEO. Let me allow this slide to play more so we can go deeper. So your keyword research is really important before you even start designing your stuff. Like you want to know, like, what are my top 5, 10, or even 25 keywords that are really going to be important? And it should maybe even look like a tag cloud. Like maybe you go to your whiteboard and you just write them all down. Then you want to take those keywords and kind of extrapolate more content from it. So do your keyword research and then maybe even go to Google and see who comes up first for this. Maybe you're already coming up on page 1. Maybe you're just right under your competitor and you found an opportunity for you to say, okay, if we can improve our content or lengthen our content or add more substantial content such as video to complement the existing complement, we can beat this person in the search engine results page, right? So do your keyword research first. A lot of people have already done this just to determine, first of all, what are my keywords and what are the semantics that surround that. Maybe you get some ideas from your competitors and insert that into your content. All right, I get a lot of people asking me about this because they go, "Oh, meta tags are dead and titles and don't matter." But they actually do. I would argue that every element of a web page is going to be important, regardless of what you read about on Google or Moz or any of the sort of publicly available resources out there. So the meta title is literally the title of the page. It can be set in lots of different ways using various different builders, whether it be WordPress or Squarespace. You essentially want to keep that title to under 80 characters, and that does include spaces. With meta titles, you kind of want to keep it tight. So your homepage can have, an 80 character mixture of keywords and other phrases that you want, but you can't stuff it all in there because, again, the search engine doesn't have time. It's only going up to the 80th characters. Everything you wrote after that is just a waste of time. So if you try stuffing in like Linfield, Melrose, and all these towns and stuff, just don't even bother because it won't read that far. Now the meta description is another field that's associated with the page. Now, these aren't necessarily something you see on the front end when you're looking at a web page. It's stuff the search engine's looking at to say, all right, what's this about? It's kind of like a Dewey Decimal thing, if some of you are familiar with the old school library directory stuff. So, and the meta title is going to give you 80 characters. And it does include spaces, and the meta description is going to give you 88, and it doesn't matter if you use spaces. So in there we don't. We just put a keyword, a comma, a keyword, a comma, a keyword, a comma. Just all of your high profile, most important, relevant keywords that are going to also occur inside of the content. So on the left side of the screen, we're talking about stuff that's behind the scenes. And on the right side, we're talking about stuff that's in front of people's faces. So you basically want that stuff to match, okay? So if the title of your page is like gluten-free donuts and rainbow jimmies, inside the content of your page, you also want to talk about that content. And so having those two things correlate with each other is going to enhance your ability to have a search engine pick it up. Let's go to the next slide. This is on-page SEO. We're talking about your content strategy. Okay, so make high content, quality content, create high quality, relevant content, number one. So everyone knows what that means. Utilize your blog and articles for SEO, right? So most people know what that means. If you don't, on your website, you can have a blog, and in your blog, you can have articles. And those articles can be categorized, tagged, and otherwise leveraged for search engine optimization. So of course, if you're always creating content on a regular basis, it's kind of like, in Google's eyes, to use a metaphor, like being a kid in a classroom. If you've always raising your hand and participating, the teacher's going to remember that, and they're going to give you a high grade for class participation. They might even write something nice like "pleasure to have in class." So the goal here is to be a pleasure to be in Google's class, so to speak. In other words, provide content on a regular basis to your website and therefore to Google's ecosystem, and you will look like a content authority on your topic. Let's move to the next slide. So now sometimes people realize they've got old content that was ranking, like, right? You might go out and just do a quick search and search your keywords, and then you'll be like, I can't believe this one article is showing up. And it does. And so, but it's okay to go in, open up that content and actually expand it. Like add more to it. If you've got a really popular article, make it more popular, add more stuff to it, call more attention to it, even link to it from your homepage if necessary, because you've caught the attention of Google. And so therefore you should just work on attracting even more attention from them. Let's move to another slide. So this is a really important topic about implementing content calendars. So at our company, we do this. We essentially manage your content calendar for you. You say, this is our budget for SEO. And we go, okay, great. We're going to do a blog post every week. We're going to make a video. We're going to do a social media post. We're going to put something on Pinterest. We're going to do an infographic, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What you really can do though is you could just say, I'm going to just release one blog post a month. I'm going to write 12 blog posts today. And every month on the second Tuesday of that month, I'm going to publish my blog post to my website. So that's essentially, to make this short because we're running out of time, that's essentially what it means to plan and implement your content calendar and how you can leverage your content for more search engine visibility. So now we're talking about other types of content. Now, if you write a blog, that's cool, and Google will love it. If you make a video or an audio piece, a piece of audio content like a podcast or stuff like that, that helps you even more. Those types of content are heavier, and Google will place a higher emphasis because there's a cost barrier to entry. For most people aren't doing videos, most people aren't doing podcasts. So that's why that content is important. You want to leverage the heavier content to get Google's attention. Again, it's like being the kid in the class that always has something good to say. Let's move on to another one. So this part has to do with making content that's on social media. Obviously, there is going to be people that will interact, and you obviously want to engage back with them. That can be done a number of ways, but really it can just be as simple as a thank you or an otherwise an answer to the question that they may have posed. The reason why we do that is because when you post on social media, the concept is people are going to come from there to your website. So all roads are going to lead to your website, whether it's a Twitter thing, or Facebook, an Instagram post, whatever it might be. You're going to leverage social media to say, hey, we exist, we're real, we're easy to talk to. Click here for more information. And that link is going straight to your site. So we're leveraging social media to get people to come to our blog, and that is going to allow search engines to see that you've got traffic coming in that's relevant from X keyword, which lines up with X keyword on your site. When you get deeper into SEO, we're going to want to do stuff like have sitemaps and robot text files and XML sitemaps. So what this essentially means is you're giving a robot a roadmap to your site. Some of the other things about technical SEO that you probably want to know that are kind of the most obvious ones are don't have broken pages. So a 404 error means that page isn't there. You want to make sure that there are none of those, and you can use some online scanners to really just find that out for you, and it'll tell you like, hey, you've got a broken link. And I can share some of those resources after the meeting. But no broken links and no errors because it's going to impact your SEO score. Let's go to another slide. Okay, so I'm at the end of the presentation now, and I'm happy to take some questions that you might have. Just to wrap things up, the importance when you're building your website, you first want to create great content. Then you want to balance that content with aesthetics. Keeping in mind you want your website to be fast so that search engines can get there. And when you're thinking about getting search engines, getting the attention of the search engine, you want to essentially make sure that the content on the front end is the same as the content on the back end. So I'm going to stop the sharing for a second to see if anyone has their hand raised, or actually, let me give it over to Erin and Stephanie to see if anyone, if you can coordinate the Q&A session.
Sure. Well, thank you so much, Anthony. I learned a lot of it. And not being, like I was saying last week, not being a small business owner. Sorry, I have a cold. You know, a lot of it's over my head, but a lot to take in. So if you have a question, please feel free to raise your hand. You know, don't be shy. Every question's a good question. I'll start it off, I guess, maybe to kind of get people thinking. You may have talked about this, but I think something, you know, maybe small businesses are very short on time. And when it comes to finding extra time to keep a website, social media, all those things going, is less more when it comes to your website. You know, with it being kind of a bit to maintain, what do you find is the most important for a small business, restaurant, retailer to really have on their website when you're directing people from social media to your website? What do you think should live there, and what should they be concentrating on?
I would say pick 5 keywords that are conducive to your business goals and objectives. And it's different for everybody. I mean, some people just need a website so that they can just say we exist and we're real. Other people have websites because it's their lifeblood. Um, you know, when people are starting a business, it's crazy because they usually say like, let me get a system for my business. I got to go buy this system. So they'll buy a CRM. And then they'll say, well, let me get my website going. But it's weird because sometimes you can start the other way. Sometimes you can get your website to do stuff that your CRM could have done. In other words, you know, you really have to think about what you want out of the website. Do you need people to fill out a form? Do you need people to just be able to call you? Are people going to buy and configure their product and service long term like they do with us? There's lots of ways to leverage the site. Are people going to come there, become a prospect, and then eventually be nurtured into a client, and then use your website to sort of manage their interactions with you and their services? You know, those are the things that have to be kind of considered. And so oftentimes you can integrate really cool systems into these modern websites that'll help you run your business. I mean, I'm talking about full POS systems, which is another acronym in our business for point of sale, and I'm sure everybody's familiar with, right? You want to be able to take credit cards, right? So if I could take a credit card through my website, then I should be able to take a credit card through my store the same exact way. And the fact is that you can. So there are lots of ways where on the ground in the brick and mortar business, technology is completely synonymous with your website tech. Um, so yeah, I think it makes sense to really think about what your goals and objectives are. Um, and even if they're just super slim and narrow, like we just want to show we exist, I think the best place to start from that perspective is what are my 5 keywords? And now let's blend that into some word salad so that we have the type of content on our page that'll be conducive to being discovered by search engines. Does anyone out there have any particular question about their platform or system, content or SEO?
Kimmy, I just saw you physically have your hand raised.
Yeah, I was trying to find the little button, but you know, multitasking. So you mentioned using.
Oh, sorry, Kimmy. Kimmy, can you just introduce yourself real quick? Just...
Kimmy, owner of Life Love Cheese, opening a shop at the end of the year, hopefully. So I already have a website. I use the Shopify platform. I'm planning to transfer over to Toast for my POS because they have a nice retail package for stores with doing more retail. Now, I was going to build my website on the Toast, but you mentioned the WordPress thing. My question is because, as Erin said, limited time. The nice thing about Toast is everything's out of the box, templated, stuff like that to do my website. You mentioned doing it on WordPress. My concerns with doing WordPress, having someone build out a WordPress site, one, are cost? What should I expect for an e-commerce website that interfaces with Toast for the e-commerce part of it while having the front end be a WordPress site? What should I expect for a cost for a custom build? And two, maintenance of a WordPress site. Years ago, I did old school WordPress and it was very painful to maintain those sites. So
Yeah, those are really, really good questions. And almost everybody should probably have that same question in their mind. So, and I'm looking at your site right here. And I want to directly address some of your questions. So I can see here from the source code that it is in fact the Shopify site. So when you have a website like Shopify or Squarespace, what essentially you're doing is renting from their platform. Now, the difference with WordPress is that you own the website. Now, the reason why that might be significant, and not a lot of people think about this, and more people should when they start a business, what's my exit strategy? For most people, it's a business, right? Everything's always for sale. Now, at the end of the day, if you were to sell your business, would you be able to sell that website that you're renting? No, you can't. You can sell the domain, but you with WordPress, you can actually include it as like a line item on the sale. Like, hey, this website that I've built out over these last 10 years has accumulated XYZ SEO prowess and this content. It's $100,000, right? So, but you can't do that if you don't own the site. So most business owners prefer to have ownership over their code, content, and copy. So that in the event, like say, let's say, now this isn't going to happen, but let's say Shopify said, "Hey, we're done doing websites, closing the doors. Everybody, you got 3 days to get your website, move your website." Everybody would be in a panic. Let's talk about WordPress a little bit more. Um, WordPress is a very flexible open source. What does open source mean? Open source is free. That's what it basically means. However, if I just gave you a helicopter today for free, would you know what to do with it? Would you know where to park it? Would you even know where the gas goes or how to turn it on? No. And that's kind of what happens when you get WordPress. You need somebody to kind of like bring it to fruition. Now, you could go theoretically and just make your WordPress website yourself and not cost anything, okay? However, it will look like you did it yourself. So is that conducive to your business goals? Most people would say no. It really depends because everyone's got something different going on. With regard to buying a WordPress, what'll happen is you'll see a lot of disparity in the prices. Some people are going to do it for 1,000, 1,500 bucks, $2,000. Other people are going to say we need 10, $20,000. And there's going to be that disparity in pricing because there's a disparity in acumen. So different people know different amounts of information and they're going to charge based on who they are. A single sole practitioner who's just working out of their home or something, right? They're going to charge less money. An agency is going to charge more money. And that disparity is directly related to acumen. We look at three things when we're doing a WordPress. It's design, making it look good, development, which is essentially making it work right, and search engine optimization, getting it to get found. So it's got to look right, it's got to work right, and it's got to get found, right? So if not, what are we doing? I mean, so most people are going to fall into those categories. So in the instance of somebody charging like the lower end, 1,000 bucks, well, they might only be able to do the design part. And maybe they just don't really understand how to like manage it, right? Or vice versa. Like lots of other people have different sort of reasons and ways that they charge for creating and setting up WordPress. But in reality, WordPress is literally a free open source thing. It's like I said, if somebody gives you this code and you're dealing with this abstract stuff, it can make sense to pay someone that understands how to do it every day. So the cost can really fluctuate. Now, you also asked about what the cost was for like maintenance and stuff like that. So WordPress requires hosting, so you'll have to host it somewhere. There are places you can host it for cheap, 10 bucks a month, $5 a month. a few $100 a year. And there are other places like WordPress VIP where it can be $1,000 a month or even more. Everybody's hosting is going to be a little bit different. It's based on lots of factors. You definitely want to, sort of start off small and just let it grow as you grow. Because the more traffic you get, the more you're gonna have to pay for your hosting plan to accommodate that traffic, right? Because if you've got a really bustling website and lots of sales and traffic coming through all the time, you want to make sure that there's a hosting plan in place that's powerful enough to accommodate that type of traffic. The other thing about hosting WordPress is you obviously want it to be quick and fast so that search engines can get it. So with our company, I can't speak for anyone else's company, but with ours, we provide these managed hosting packages for people, and it essentially allows for some free time every month so that you can have some edits done too. So those cheap plans, they start out at $50, and essentially it gives you world-class, super fast, always updated hosting. Now, when you're managing WordPress, as you mentioned before, you probably had to update your plugins all the time and update the core, and then it can break the site. So that stuff can be kind of problematic. With us, we do backups every night. So every single night your WordPress is backed up. Now you can edit your site all you want, and when or if you break it, you just tell us and we go, oh, you broke your site? Okay, we just roll back your backup, pop it back into place how it was at 12 a.m. the day before, and everything's back to normal, and you start over, and hopefully don't break the site. So there are some caveats to running your own stuff. That's why it really makes sense to have an agency or some tech person sort of behind you to back you up. Every business is at their own sort of stage of growth. For some people, it makes sense for them to do it themselves. Other people may have a solo practitioner, and others are going to require an agency with a service level agreement to make sure that their stuff's always running. So I hope I covered all the questions you had packed in there, Kimmy. I see Radha is here. Hi, Radha. You're muted.
Hi. I'm trying.
How are you?
Good. How are you? Good to see you, everybody.
Yeah.
I got a little bit late, few minutes. I had the things happen in the morning in my life. So again, Radha from Radha Boutique. I wanted to go back to the Shopify. I have a Shopify platform, and I wanted to find it to me as a somebody who doesn't have a lot of time to focus on it. I know it's automatically updated. I don't have to worry about the technology in the background. They're sort of like, maybe I'm wrong. Am I like, I don't know, my website, it hasn't been touched since my daughter left a couple years ago. So this is the site that I actually did myself. Don't ask me how, I can't repeat it now. It's one of those things. So I really don't. I did it, and I have no idea. I have to scratch my head now. It's been so long. But I found it easy to add the product if I wanted to, and so on. So I'm thinking, that's what is the difference with something as simple between Shopify site that has that automatic backout and all that updating to the technology, to the WordPress that is done by scratch?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I'm confused if I was going to go, let's say, close my store and I am going straight to just online. I would actually treat my site maybe with a lot more questions.
Of course you would. Yes, 100%. So I think you brought up some good stuff. One of the nice things about having your stuff on Shopify is that you can kind of set it and forget it. Now, one of the main reasons people move away from that platform, well, I guess there's a lot of reasons, but one of the main reasons is that when you're dealing with the rented platform solution, there's a lot of limitations. So some people aren't happy with those limitations, so they go to WordPress because with WordPress you can basically customize your coloring to be anything you want. Um, it's like saying, here's Shopify, and you only get these 12 crayons. And if you want to use 256 crayons, go to WordPress. Do you see what I'm saying? So now you may not need that level of customization at all. So it makes sense to stay with a simple platform like Shopify. And you may not be looking at an exit strategy for selling your business and including your website as part of that transaction. So that's another reason you can stick with Shopify. Um, so long story short, if you don't need a really advanced level of complexity, then Shopify can suit your needs. And they also, because you're on their platform, they're doing the upgrades and updates in the background for you. So that's also a nice thing.
But one of the things that like I was toying around when I'm ready to like, okay, do I focus more online? What I was thinking that as you can see, that had item from last Christmas. That's how much I added to my site.
Yeah.
So that's terrible. However, I would be looking for somebody like, okay, keep my Shopify platform, but I want it to be like a little bit of spiffed up,
Yeah.
that it's better, because I don't think I'm taking advantage of all Shopify that it's actually is giving me, or opportunity to actually that I have. I don't think I'm tapping to much of that possibilities, or I'm confused.
No, you're probably not. Because you have a life, right? So why you couldn't possibly know all of the features and things that Shopify has come up with recently. You said you haven't touched in a while. Yeah, there's probably some elements of this that you could uncover and leverage and utilize for your business.
Mhm.
So and Shopify offers different templates. I mean, they're limited, but you can use them. You can.
This is one of the templates.
Yeah, yeah, you can change these templates to be, whatever you want. Like say you looked at BCBG and you said, you know what, I really want to go with this style. I want these fonts, I want this vibe. There's a high probability that you can do that right within Shopify. There's probably also a bunch of other details in Shopify. Shopify has a special connection to social media as well. Like there's a Meta plugin that we're using right now for another woman who does. This is going to sound weird, but Kimmy will find this interesting. There's a client of ours that does, everyone knows edible arrangements. She does
Mhm.
edible arrangements, but it's meat and cheese boards. So like send somebody a meat and cheese board kind of thing.
Mhm.
And so we're running her SEO and paid media campaigns, and discovered that Shopify just released this cool little feature where you can essentially plug right in and run your ads through Meta. So that's pretty cool. And I don't think a lot of people are familiar with that because again, you got to be kind of nerdy and really in there. We do it every day, so that's why we know about it. I think Shopify probably represents maybe like 10 to 15% of the users, and the rest are high majority on WordPress. It matters little. You have to choose the platform that's right for you at the time that it's right for you.
I
Uh,
just want to add one comment about that. I chose the platform, the templates that it's included free, and I toy around on some of those paid platform. But what I had discovered that they basically have a lot less customer service once you go to these paid platform. Shopify goes like, nope, something goes wrong. It has nothing to do with us. So you have to contact those templates that you paid, and that was like above my pay grade.
I know, and I'm sorry that that happens, but that's the unfortunate nature of the beast when you deal with some of these larger platforms that are renting you a site. They're gonna give you the brush. You're gonna be talking to three different people that don't know what you talked to the last person about, and stuff like that can be kind of infuriating, especially when there's like a fire. Like, for instance, maybe you did a Black Friday sale and your website is supposed to be up and it's not, and the code isn't working, and people are trying to check out, but the things aren't working the way you want. It's another reason to consider having a professional, whether it be a solo practitioner, somebody you know, or an agency that kind of backs you up. With our scenario, we have people that run almost $200,000 a month through their WordPress store, just through their store. So the service level agreement that they have is very specific to the things they need, the timeliness that they need to have a response in when they open support tickets with us, and the very specific level of support that is related to their product and offering, and what states they can and can't sell it in, and where the tax is a little bit slightly different, the tax rate, things like that. It can be way easier. Just get a really nice web person that you like, and hire them, pay them some nominal fee, because you're going to thank yourself later when you're not ripping your hair out of your head on a Black Friday and your phone's ringing out the hook because your site doesn't work. Because
I will
Yeah.
say though, that's not a guarantee. I had hired somebody to help with to build the base of the Shopify site at the time. I just didn't have the time.
yeah,
The difficulty I found with Shopify is, I think as Rada pointed out, is like you can start adding apps, and suddenly you're paying several $100s for all these apps. And then the problem is that they allow external developers to write apps that aren't always totally compatible with their native platform, especially when it's in the shopping cart area. So when I started adding things for doing delivery pickup and multiple locations, it didn't speak properly to the native checkout, which you cannot download a non-native checkout. So, I mean, to me, it's one of the reasons I'm kind of leaving Shopify, because of the ecosystem being open to developers who then crash the rest of your site. I went for like 3 weeks not being able to sell it, not knowing I wasn't selling anything until somebody finally told me.
Oh my God, I'm sorry. That's the worst. And you
Because
actually,
people couldn't get their their carts to load, and I was not told until later.
jeez.
Well, it's for me, I kind of am aware of that. I downloaded the minimum amount of
Yeah.
these apps, and I go back and research them before I download them and see which one. It's very confusing.
Yeah. And then when one app updates or when the platform updates, the native platform updates and the app isn't
Doesn't.
on. Yeah.
Exactly.
So, I
Yeah,
mean, but to me, I mean, so I had actually paid a little bit of extra money to get somebody to develop my site. This is one of those things where it's like you have to be online, but this is an entire job of itself, and I don't have money for a full-timer to
Yeah.
run the website, which it's nice to have like a Wix site that is completely closed ecosystem where they don't have outside developers dumping stuff in, but then you are extremely limited to what they can do.
That's
So
yeah.
now that I'm going to be growing into having a larger e-commerce, I'm going with an out-of-the-box POS system with Toast.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about the WordPress for the front end and having somebody develop that. My concern is how those two then interface with each other. I don't want somebody to send out to I'm getting into some very like detailed stuff that I'm sure this whole
I like it.
platform doesn't want to get into, but I don't want to send out to an external platform when somebody goes to place an order.
Listen, you're touching on topics that probably everybody doesn't really have the sense to articulate the same way you do. And I really appreciate you showing the technical acumen, the depth of your acumen as well. And by the way, Toast works great with WordPress because they're like both like different systems. So you can integrate them both. And if one goes down, it's mutually, they're not mutually exclusive to each other, right?
Yeah.
So they don't depend on each other or anything like that. We're agency partners with Toast, so when people have a situation where they need that, we give it to them. Because despite the fact that we have our own online ordering system for small businesses that small businesses use around here, sometimes Toast is a powerful option that allows you to connect directly to your inventory in a way that's rock solid. I will say, sometimes it can also crash and go south. Now, I hate to say anything bad about other providers, but I mean, this happened just the other day. But on the whole, no problem with Toast. I mean, I think you're making a wise choice to go there. Now, I want to touch on something that you and Rada both said about the idea of adding plugins to add features to your site. Everybody wants to do this, right? They get a site builder, then they start adding the plugins. Now, when the site gets updated, the plugin has to get updated too. And if it doesn't, then it breaks and then you can't check out, and it's all this weird stuff. So you kind of have to be careful, because if you go to the bottom of the ladder and you just hire anybody to do your site, they're going to essentially just add all these plugins in. And while that might work great for the day, when you go to update all that stuff, it all breaks, because you have to update it all in tandem with each other. Of course, first you do backups. Now, all that stuff is a little weird and different when you go from Shopify to Squarespace and so on and so forth. I do want to say, though, WordPress is cool, but WordPress has the same issue. So, like, people write plugins for WordPress that are third party. We are one of those people. We write plugins that do things on WordPress that we want them to do. The difference is that we manage it. So we're managing the business continuity factor and making sure that that plugin is constantly doing the thing that it does. Does it always work? No, it doesn't always work. That's why we're there to fix it. So what you don't want to get caught in is a place where you paid cheap dollars for someone to do a website and it worked that day, and then later on it doesn't work.
So it sounds like, yeah, it sounds like websites are always evolving. There's always going to be challenges, right? And it sounds like it's something that you need to think about, I think, before you put in your website, what you're going to create it, what you can actually maintain.
Yeah.
I appreciate all that. I wanted to see if anyone else had any other questions. I know we're getting kind of close to the time of wrapping up. I think Anthony would be more than happy. I won't speak for him, but if you do have follow-up questions. Oh, Judy.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so my question is that I've been told that you don't even need a website anymore.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. You don't. You might not need a website at all. I mean, let's say, for instance, you're a famous celebrity and people just already know you. What do you need a website for? Unless you're going to sell merch, somebody might say to you, hey, you're famous. You don't have a website. Why not? Let me make it for you and you can sell merch and we'll split it. It's all kinds of reasons. I would argue that if you don't have a website, it can make you seem as though you're not professional. Now, back in the day, let's go back to like 2002. I started making websites. If you had a website, people would go, wow, that person's got a website. That's amazing. And now you fast forward to 2024, and if you don't have a website, people go, wow, you don't have a website? That's actually amazing that you don't have a why. So, but everybody has to make their own choice, like if you say, hey, I own the business and I'm saying I don't need a website, then you're totally right. Oh, what happened?
You disappeared.
I'm back. Okay. So and you're in the caregiving business?
Yes, it's all online.
Yeah.
So
So
I
if it's
feel
all,
like I do need a website.
yeah, if it's all online, you definitely need a site. If it's not, if you're, like an animal whisperer or something like that, and you do site visits and you don't want to have an internet presence, then there's lots of use cases for like not really needing a site. It's rare. Most people like in this room probably need a site to at least let people know that they're real. See, one of the things about having a presence out there on the web, it's a super cheap way to put a stake in the ground and say, I exist. You're also telling Google that your business is here in case somebody wants to type caregiver near me, and come up with stuff. Google's going to serve up a business listing and say, here's the website if you want to go deeper. And that's kind of what you want if you're looking for customers. If you don't want customers, then you might not want a website.
Can you have like a one-page landing page or website that's very simple?
Yes, you can. You can absolutely have just a single page. And that single page can contain most of the information and even a contact form at the bottom so that people can, reach out to you if the need arises.
So is that still done on those platforms like Squarespace, Wix, and WordPress?
Yes, usually. So most people pick between one of like 5 major platforms out there. You can also do HTML, which, not to get too deep into a rabbit hole, but it's just code hosted on a server, and you don't need any of those platforms. So there are lots of different options, and realistically, what you end up with usually is determined by the type of person you hire. And that's weird in this business, but it just happens. Like when you go to a person and you say, I need a thing, they go, let me just do it the way that I know how. So
Mhm.
some people just only know Shopify, so you get a Shopify. Other people only know WordPress, so you get a WordPress, you know? So, but the proper way to do it is to say, okay, what is the business problem you're trying to solve? I just need a presence. Okay, here's WordPress. You know, I want everybody has a different sort of need. So you give the customer the solution that speaks to the need that they have, you know?
And where does Google My Business fit into all of this?
So, like, Google has a few different indexes, they're called. And you can think about it like a Rolodex of information. So when you have a business with a brick and mortar address, what happens is you put that information into the Google ecosystem, and one of the indexes is all businesses. And those businesses are associated to an address, and that address gets transposed into latitude and longitude, like literal coordinates. Okay. And then when you open up your phone and you say, caregiver near me, what Google does first is says, what is that person's IP address? Like me. An IP address is like a phone number. So it shows that I'm sitting in Wakefield right now, right? So then it takes my IP address and its latitude and longitude coordinates and compares it against its index of other businesses in the area and says, oh, this person is close. So let's show them the list of businesses that are pertinent to their location. So that's the Google My Business Index. There's a bunch of indexes. Like, have you ever done a search for, like, Disney on Ice tickets for my grandchildren this weekend, right? And then it shows like a carousel at the top of a bunch of options and prices. That's a whole other index. So when we look at search engine optimization, for the most part, we want your business to be visible in all those indexes.
Rhonda, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah,
don't know
I
if
have a
this-
really quick question, which is
Okay.
that brings me up that one pager thing. So you see a lot of like one pager for one single product or group of product that people can just buy right away, buy now, and so on. Are there bots, sale funnels, one pager deals that people places and as an ad, and usually just a one page for that one singular product? Where those are hosted?
So okay, so to reiterate your question, you see a lot of flash sales. They go to a one-page site. Where are they hosted? Well, it's probably just a page on the website that is devoid of any navigation, excuse me. Like, for instance, if I went to, the internet and I said couches for sale for a big living room or whatever I write, I'm a person, I get a bunch of things. This is that index I was talking about.
Oh, sorry. I actually turned your screen off just when you were just talking. So if you want to share your screen again.
Oh, okay. Maybe I don't have to share it. I'll just so what I'm saying in short is that when people do paid media campaigns, and that's to say like pay per click, when you like pay Google and they put your ad at the top, what most of the professionals do when the person clicks that ad, right? You paid for that person to come to your site, right? We don't want them to be distracted by anything else. No mission statement, no about us, no our story, nothing. So when you get to that page, usually there's no navigation at the top. It might just have your brand. And the reason is to keep people hyper focused on the purchase aspect.
Okay.
Yeah. So
And
that's
those
not,
are like what they call it bots, sales funnels. Like they
well,
just pop up everywhere.
yeah. So a sales funnel means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, but just to make it like super simple, essentially it's like the endpoint. So when you spent all this money to get these people to jump through all these hoops and land on your site to do a purchase, that end result page is probably just going to be just focused on that particular sales effort. So it's probably not a one page it's probably an extended little endpoint, a microcosm of a bigger site.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
So we're
Also confusing.
So we're wrapping up on our time here. I want to thank Anthony from Boston Web Group. I will send his information around if you guys have any follow-up questions. I hope today you found resourceful just like you did last week. I just wanted to share my screen real quick and I thought I was sharing it when we started, but I wasn't. Just to remind folks that our next training is next Tuesday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. talking about marketing automation and AI-driven tools, which I know we've talked about a little bit already. And then on November 26th, again, the public relations for small businesses, again in the morning, 8:30 to 10. So if any of you have any questions about the program in general, feel free to email me, call me. I'm available. But again, I want to thank Anthony. I learned a lot today. A lot for you small businesses. Oh, and I know Stephanie has her hand. I'm going to let her go
Yeah, I
ahead.
just wanted to say, feel free to reach, I work with Anthony at Boston Web Group, so feel free to add my info to any follow-up info as well, and anyone can shoot me an email if you have any additional questions. So we're happy to see you all here.
Yeah, thank you. And they're a Wakefield business. So thank you. I think that's all I have for today. Again, reach out and we will talk soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.